and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore of the Old World, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our ghouls from our goblins, our snotlings from our Skaven stormfiends, and our bloodthirsters from our bloodletters, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about Warhammer. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Hi there.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about Warhammer.
Absolutely fuck all, even after 34 episodes.
And my dear brother Darren.
I'm 51.
Who knows so much about Warhammer, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. After gathering online to slay some vermin in the name of Sigmar, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Ignorance. 51? Mate, you've aged terribly.
You know what they say about 51? It's the new 52.
It feels like it this morning, lads. I feel exactly 1 year older than I actually am.
God, I feel so 53 years old.
I am turning 40 in a few weeks' time. What advice would you give to somebody turning 40? Don't.
If you want any kind of long-term stability or mental health, don't have any redheads in your life.
Strong
stance. How do you feel about pegging? We've not talked about pegging in quite a while. I don't know why that suddenly leapt to mind.
Is that something to do with being 40, I guess?
Well, I don't know if you can remember my 40th birthday or the day of 8 cakes.
Oh yes, the day of 8 cakes. Yes,
because I organised a baking contest, so a load of people turned up with a load of cakes. Yeah, a baking contest.
Bacon. Oh, baking.
Okay. Bacon. You had to literally make your own bacon at the party. And not in the kind of making bacon sort of, euphemism, but actual bacon.
In a kind of, we've tarpaulined entire rooms to be able to cope with the blood spray.
Yeah.
I watched a thing this morning where a biologist, an actual biologist, was saying that plants not only can sense when people are around them, they sense when beings are around them, they sense when there's movement near them, but also certain plants, if they're damaged, emit a kind of pheromone chemical signal that not only makes their fluids, in quotes, bitter, but also alerts other plants of a similar type nearby to go ahead and make their fluids bitter. And this was kind of discussed in a kind of TikTok-y style thing. And then it was duetted by a load of vegans crying.
What?
And did
you say you watched it this morning? Are you sure you just weren't dreaming in a half doze, half dazed kind of state? Like, I have those weird lucid dreams when I'm kind of waking up, of crying vegans and communicating stamens, and all gets a bit wacky.
I don't know why you had to bring stamens into it.
Any excuse to say the word stamen.
It's a really uncomfortable word.
Yeah, he's under a judgment not to say the word stamen in public.
Right, Crowley, you know what time it is.
Hello, Reichland. It's time for Sirot's Ep Recap.
Hooray! High Elf History Numero Uno, Part 1. Some shit happened with some elves. It got real high elfy. Tune in next time for another episode. Let me rack my brains here. Let me see what I can dig out of the depths of my memories.
I'm really keen for this WhatsApp recap because I was downstairs making a coffee earlier. I was like, I can't remember a fucking thing that we talked about last time. I know it was the history thing. I know Malekith was involved and he wasn't as bad a guy as we thought, but that was it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Now I do feel 52, you cocks.
You feel 52 cocks?
What the hell am I doing with my life?
That is...
Yes.
You feel 52 cocks.
You're married.
Sorry, you don't get an additional cock every time you have a birthday.
What? I feel daily. Right, go on, Carl.
Okay, all right. What did we do? Okay, so yeah, like you said, Malekith, Anarion. It was the fall of the Polar Gates, wasn't it? And shit was really fucking the Elves' Day up after having pretty much what was paradise on Earth for many, many eons. Just them, the Lizardmen, the Slan, the Old Ones, and some other cool dudes. And then bam, Polar Gates broke. Chaos ensued. Their Shangri-La type life was shattered into pieces, and they were fighting off lots of chaos. And then some spunky, plucky young elf, who probably wasn't that young, probably several thousand years old, Inari went, "Hey, I've had enough. I've had enough of all this chaos. I'm going to do something about it. I'm a doer, not a talker." So
I'm a spunker, not a whatever else is not a spunker.
Yes, Darren.
I'm a non-spunker.
Yeah, Anarion had enough. Went to the shrine of some dudes to empower himself. Shrine of Azuran, wasn't it? Shrine of Azuran. Easy for me to say. And Anarion was like, "I'm going to walk through this fire because I have this weird feeling that if I walk through this flame, it's going to sort shit out." So he walked through the fire, and he became the Phoenix King. Got some uber Super Saiyan powers. Made friends with Caledor, who's the dwarvish, not dwarvish, sorry, the elfin, wrong race, the elven blacksmith. And Caledor made some badass weapons. And then I think didn't he have an input on kind of making the Great Vortex as well? He was like, "Hey, what we need is a great big plug hole to get rid of all this chaos."
No, he was like, that was his plan. He was like, "Let's do this."
That's what I just said. Yeah. So he was like,
he said he had an input. He was like, he was the main dude.
Okay, he was the main event. Right. Yeah. He was like, "Look, there's nothing that plug holes cannot solve. Get a big fucking plug hole." So they're like, "Okay."
To be fair, that is true. I have no comments on that. That is true.
I can tell you think about because you're not saying anything. You're not interrupting, you see. So everything is absolutely textbook at the moment. And Ben, help me out here, bro.
So then the guy whose name I never remember and Caledor had an argument. I always get his name mixed up with the
Naval.
He had an argument with Caledor, and he was like, "Look, I don't think we should do the plug," because he wanted to basically wipe chaos out completely.
Because and the reason he got so fucking battle lusty is because he got the sword of Cain.
Yes, that's the one.
AKA the potter's wheel of Malekith. Or something.
Oh, how wholesome.
AKA the rubber mallet of Timmy Mallet. Yeah, that's right. He went all bloodlusty, didn't he? And
he was like, "Let's just wipe him out."
Yeah, exactly. But Caledor was like, and then didn't Caledor come and save his ass, but then died for his efforts or something like that? Caledor was like, well, even though
Caledor started. This is like the biggest alley-oop of a WhatsApp ever. So a WhatsApp recap. So Caledor started. He took a load of mages to the Isle of the Blighted Isle. Is that where?
Which originally was going to be a stag night. And then, fuck, now we're going to save the world.
And the hangovers were so great the following day that a fucking tornado started and they turned it into this chaos plug hole. And then while they were doing that, all of the chaos forces were like, "Right, there's a party going on over here. Let's head that way." And then Anarion, he was just like, "Fuck's sake. I've told him not to fucking do this. He's brought all the chaos here." So he had to go to the Isle and basically fight a champion of each of the chaos gods. Do you remember that?
Oh, that's right. Round 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Round 2.
Laser.
Final battle.
Blazer. And so he...
Yada, 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 the Hanging Gardens of Babylon prophet. Can we please move on?
Malekith. Oh, yeah. And then, that's right. Marathi.
And then there was the whole other 1600 years of Malekith.
Darren, hold on. We're not done yet.
Yeah.
Marathi.
Just shut up now.
And Anarion. No, hold on. Ben. Let's
hold on. Wait.
Didn't Anarion's original wife, who he genuinely loved, get torn apart in front of him by the forces of chaos or something like that? And then he ended up rebounding with, what's her name? Mum.
I'm
Marathi.
51.
Someone on Tinder.
Anarian and Marathi had
Elf
Malekith
Tinder.
as a kid. Malekith seemed pretty fucking earnest and sincere and elvish to begin with, didn't he? He was just like, he was like, I am the son of Anarian. I should be king, but I will serve whoever is elected, like a true democratic state. We will do this properly. But Marathi was pretty pissed off anyway. But Malekith was, hey, chill, Mom, chill, it's okay. And he served Belshazzar, Shamalama Ding Dong. Something like that.
Yeah. And he went off, didn't he? He was just like, I'm going to hit the road, Jack, and, like, preach the good preach about elves and got really chummy with the dwarves.
Yeah. Malekith made really
And then he met somebody he fell in love with, didn't he?
Yeah. It was all going really well for Malekith.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I can kind of sense why he went down. When you get so high, you've got a lot further to fall. And I'm interested to hear about the fall of Malekith.
Philosophical.
Malekith.
Didn't he? So he met that girl, and then didn't he go to? He went and searched some ruins, and he found something, and it twisted his melon.
The circle of power. He went to the ruins where, like, you couldn't see the joins. The craftsmanship was so good. It looked like everything had been chiseled out of one single block of.
The details he remembers are so hilarious.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? Oh! And they wore a yellow and red sweater.
It's all in there. It's all in there. You just need the right keywords to unlock it.
That's it. Give enough monkeys, enough typewriters, and
yes.
I'm getting real Memento vibes from this. So.
and then that was it. He was fucking mental, and he came back and he was just like he accused Bel Shamalama Ding Dong of being a bit of a feisty bugger, and he was like, right, everybody that's on my side, attack, and I'm going to walk through this fire, and it didn't go well for him.
No, it fell out.
Didn't go well.
And his mum started a coven of witches or something like that as well. The cult of the witches, the cult of something. I don't know. I'm bored of myself, Darren.
We're not bored of you, Kral.
Elves, boo.
I feel like we've brought the energy of the 40k recap into and that's my fault. I shouldn't have contributed. I should have just let you go. But you asked for my help. That's probably where we've gone wrong here.
Oh boy.
Can either of you remember how we ended the episode?
Yeah, I said, all right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the dog. No, you didn't.
And Darren, you were going, interrupting, blah, blah, blah. Yada.
Yeah. It's very similar to all 30 circa episodes that we've done before. That wasn't what you were asking. How did it end?
What cataclysmic event ended the episode?
Oh, the sundering.
Nope.
Fuck's sake.
Your sundering.
Yeah.
My sundering? Their sundering.
Hello, this is my sundering.
What great cataclysmic event.
Okay, perhaps I'm being too general.
Okay.
What act of treachery punctuated the end of last episode? Who did what to whom?
Oh, didn't Malekith set Belshazzar up? Belshazzar wasn't around to defend himself, but Malekith accused him of being in there with like Slaneshi excess cultists or something like that.
That's what I just said.
Exactly right.
Boom!
No, boom. And then Malekith seemingly had Bel Shamalama Ding Dong poisoned.
Right.
And all the princes
they didn't believe
on
it.
now. That's a bridge too far now.
Yeah. We zoned out after 1 hour, 43 minutes and 52 seconds, and then
he was like, right, everybody kill. They were like, kill Malekith, and he was like, no, hold on. And then all of his dudes jumped in and fucking slaughtered all of the princes. Is that right?
Close, but no.
Okay.
What did Malekith do?
He walked through the fire.
There we go. Jesus,
I literally said that like 2 seconds ago.
No, you didn't. You said the sundering.
No, before that, we'll record
Brothers.
rewind the recording.
No, I'm
sorry, but I think your age is catching up to your memory. You're losing it a little bit.
I did literally say he told all of his men to attack, and then he walked through the fire and turned into a fucking
Marshmallow.
Charcoal.
See, you
briquette.
can't even remember what you said.
I fucking said it.
Yeah.
All right, this feels like the
Malekith
fucking...
walks through. Go on. No, that's all right.
I was just
Interrupt
gonna
me, Chris.
s-
Carry on.
Yeah, I will. For once. I was just going to say, this whole process feels like walking through the flame of Ajian at the moment.
Oh,
Very
let me
painful.
tell you, that was so worth the interruption. Anyway, so
This is going to be a bitchy episode. We're going to... Claws are out this episode. Claws are fucking out. All right. You square bear.
Anyway, so he walked through the fire for the third time, and he came out
Malekith
of this-
becomes a charcoal briquette. He is
Yeah.
set ablaze within the flame of Azurian. He walks in, doesn't get more than halfway before the pain is so overwhelming that he just kind of flops out like a drunk trout. And his followers carry him away to Nagrithi. Nagarithi?
Doesn't his-
Gary Ithi.
does the fire kind of burn out all of the remaining good in him? Is that kind of what happened?
Well, I think good or bad, if you've got 75-degree burns, you're going to be a bit tetchy. A little bit irritable.
I burnt myself on the frying pan a couple of weeks ago.
Is
I was
your,
a crabby bastard all day. So
Ben, is your question more, is it because he didn't complete the ritual, the
Well,
effects
what-
of the flame
yeah.
actually had a negative
the opposite
effect on his
effect,
persona?
yeah. Because wasn't it with the Narian that when he walked through the flame, it purged, a lot of those defects, and he was meant to come out. So yeah, that's what I was saying. Was it the reverse of that? Did it go like now you were a bit on the fence before, now you're a cunt. Get out of my flame.
I'm going to say yes. I'm not entirely sure what everything you said meant, but yes.
I
mean-
do know what you say, Ben. I don't think so. I think he just became bitter because he regretted not being able to do it. Even though he was saying out loud vocally that I'm okay not being the king and I will serve the king and blah blah blah. When he was patient enough and waited for his moment, he fluffed it, and I think that was the catalyst for him to just go down. He's like, nice guys finish last. I've been nice all my fucking life. I'm rightfully the king. I couldn't even make it through the fire. I'm just going to be a sourpuss from now on. Right. Fuck everybody.
Here's a genuine question, and I'm genuinely asking it. I don't know what the answer is, but do you think the Iron Circlet, the Iron Crown, played any role in this? Because in the novels, it's implied that Malekith's change of character came about after he discovered the Iron Crown, the Circlet of Iron. If you recall, when he went away exploring, his then wife was, doting and loving, and when he came back, he had completely changed. And
she was like, nope. And she was a priestess of like a moon priestess or something.
The moon goddess, of the moon goddess.
She was just
Lilith,
like, you've got bad energy, man. I am out of here. And she
red flag.
She hit the old dusty trail.
I don't. This whole new vibe, I don't like it for you. So I'm leaving.
Yeah. Goodbye. Well, I'm just going to moon you before I go, because that's what I do.
That was funny, but I'm barreling on.
Was that the sound of her mooning? Meh.
So what she makes. Looks at you.
And it's the noise she makes with her mouth as she locks eye contact with you as you try not to stare at her arse. I'm unclear as to whether he was wearing the Iron Circlet of Iron, Hand of Nagash, when he went into the flames.
Can you imagine though, like if he goes off from her to find that iron crown thing, and he's good. And then he comes back, and like she's not sure if there's she feels like there's something wrong, but her suspicions are confirmed when he walks through the door wearing an iron crown, just really fucking like massive horns, and it's all pointy. And he's like, "Oh, hello, darling." And she's like, "Something
Just, like,
seems different."
evil, flashing in neon lights.
Have you been to evil Las Vegas?
I hear what you're saying, Alicera, but the crown has spoken. I think it suits me.
I think it's time for you to leave. Don't moon me when you go, all right?
He got a Dear Malekith letter that just had written, me. Phonetically, in High Elf script.
So you're saying that he was wearing that when he went
no,
through the flames?
I don't know. I don't know if he was or not. I think if given the radical transformation of him over a century or so, and his behavior prior to all of that, which seems to have been good and noble and well intended and earnest in a way that is, that was genuinely him. I feel he may have been corrupted by perhaps the city and the crown in which the city which held the crown, because it predated the old ones.
Wow.
And had, if you can remember, it had like tiny humans.
Oh yeah.
The skeletons of tiny humans in it. Not hobbits, tiny humans.
Not dwarves, not hobbits, not elves even, which we know
not
are
even
smaller
elves.
than humans.
Tiny humans.
In Warhammer.
Oh yeah, elves are they're smaller than humans. That's mad.
Mildly smaller.
Mildly smaller.
Anyway, yes. So I feel the Circlet of Iron had a big role to play in Malekith's corruption. And if we go back in a time machine about 15 minutes to answer your question, Ben, I think whatever failings Malekith had were burned out, but then replaced with whatever was in the Circlet of Iron. That's my theory.
Right,
it's not actually, formalized or canon in any way.
I like your theory. I subscribe to that.
So, what happened afterwards? That's a rhetorical question I'm about to tell you.
What happened afterwards?
Malekith's allies flee the Temple of Azurian and race back to Nagarith. Nagarith? Yeah, Nagarith. That's how you... Yeah, Gary... They flee back to Gary.
Which is near Barry. Tell me Gary's in Barry. That would be amazing.
No. Gary is on the opposite side of the sphincter that is Ulthuan.
Larry.
It's on the almost exact opposite. Gary and Barry are opposite.
Gary and Barry are either sides of Larry. Excellent.
The Great Vortex, Larry. No one is able to pursue Malekith beyond a few leagues because they have no king. Belshazzar was poisoned. Malekith didn't cut the mustard and came out looking like one of the sausages I cook on barbecues. And so they're able to escape to Nagarith with no real problems. This leaves the High Elf princes with a real kind of countdown conundrum. Who are they going to... Who are they going to elect? They have no real kind of clear frontrunner until it is mentioned that the captain of the Phoenix Guard, who is the kind of chief priest there at the Temple of Azurian, or the chief of the guard, I suppose. The clue was there in the word guard. It was decided that there was only one real candidate for Phoenix King, and that was Prince Imric of Caledor, who was the grandson or grand elf. I don't want to be obviously offensive. I wish to be culturally sensitive to high elves.
Who are you talking to?
Well, after listening to the recap, no one, mate. No one.
Touche.
He's the grandson of Caledor Dragon Tamer, who was the one who had the idea for the Great Vortex. He wasn't just involved, it was his idea. And so this began the 30-ish year civil war on Ulthuan. There are kind of many tales of daring do and disaster, but it's all set within the context of a kind of brother versus brother style war across Ulthuan and all the colonies. We have to remember that the High Elves obviously had spread themselves all over the world at this stage. Morathi, having been released from confinement, began to instruct the cults of pleasure and excess. It is revealed that she is in fact the high priestess of these cults, just to begin recruitment and sabotage of the High Elf forces and High Elf armies.
How rife was that cult by that point? How far-reaching was it?
Depending on which source you look at, either 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 members of the High Elf race had some connection to that cult, and thus to loyalty to Malekith through Morathi, who backed obviously her son, as any doting, somewhat touchy-feely mother would. They. That does not mean that everyone who supported Malekith was a member of that cult. That's not true. And at least towards kind of the early days of the Civil War, Malekith had the advantage of numbers. But the tide obviously began to turn, and we'll talk about that shortly. Within a few years, there was a significant battle for the control of I really can't pronounce it. Nagarith. Nagarathi. So the very first kind of area that Malekith tries to seize control of is Nagarathi. He tries to get rid of any loyalist elf or elf family within his own kingdom. And most of them have already sided with Malekith in the kind of civil war. But there was one really kind of famous family, the family of Anar, who rebelled. These were loyalists to the core house of High Elves, and unfortunately came to a somewhat sticky end within a battle referred to as the Battle of Dark Fen. It began with Malekith sending out all of his followers into the lands of Anar. And these were real kind of accomplished hunters and trackers and scouts and supreme archers.
But terrible fighters.
But they all had limps for some reason.
Squeamish.
It was a cult. It was a cultural thing, yeah. They went into battle with butterfly nets. They couldn't stomach holding spears. Yeah.
Strongly worded letters.
So hundreds of these Dark Elves, or hundreds of Malekith's followers, Dark Elves didn't really exist yet, raced across the kind of open ground in front of the Anar estates and were peppered, I say, with the kind of black fletched arrows that were famous of the kind of hunters of the Anar clan.
What does fletched mean?
Fletched is the feathers on the back
bits
of the arrow.
Yeah. Okay, right.
The fletching. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a stick.
So at the close of the battle, the Dark Elves were able to swarm over the Anar estates, and unfortunately, the head of the Anar family, Eothlir, was crushed under the feet of the opposing general's dragon. Basically, just stomped him out.
Trump card, isn't it? It's like, I've got a fucking dragon. Oh shit!
Stomp.
So Eothlir, as he's dying, cries out to his son Aelith to flee. We will come back to, or we will return. Stop laughing, Ben, every time I say the word come.
No, I'm just trying to think, like, how did he call out to his son while he was being stomped on by a dragon? Like
with a lisp. Aleph.
Run away! Run away!
Would have been like,
ow!
And your son's going, what? Dad, I can't hear you. Speak up. Oh, I'm being stepped on by a dragon.
I've genuinely forgotten where I saw this, but someone did a skit about hearing really, really angry people trapped in barrels. And it's just the funniest fucking thing. And he can't do anything because he's in a fucking barrel. Brilliant. Anyway, yes, we will return to the family of Anar later on in our kind of historical rundown, but they do play a vital role in the fight against the Dark Elves. As the war continues, we see on both sides people, I say people, elves, who realize that they may be on the wrong side. So there's a kind of slew of kind of traitorous exoduses in either direction. One of the most important ones, Exodi, is a renegade prince of Safri. Remember, we discussed this in episode 1. Safri is kind of innately magical kingdom of Ulthuan. That's where eventually the White Tower of Hoeth will be built. And in addition to these wizard princes, a priest of Vol being the forge god of the High Elf Pantheon, or the Elf Pantheon as it still is, steals the sacred hammer from Vol's anvil and makes his way to Nagarith.
Is it not Nagrathi? Is that a different place?
Nagarathi.
I swear you've called it Nagrathi before, but
yeah, I have.
Lost all meaning now. You've said it too many times.
Spell it.
Nagarath. Anyway, so this priest, who's referred to as Hotek because that's his name, escapes from Vol's anvil, taking with him the sacred hammer, and it is he who forges the great black armor that is fused onto Malekith's body. It is literally taken while it is still red hot and pressed onto his flesh. So his flesh and the armor are one and the same at this minute. Pause for discussion about how he has a piss.
How does he have a piss?
Yeah, Malekith, like, guy can't get a break. Fucking, oh man, I'm so glad I'm out the flame of Azure, and that was so painful. Put your hands up, please, Malekith.
Does he just have to? I guess when he goes to the toilet, he just puts his leg. He just stands on the loo,
cocks his leg.
Yeah, because it's just going to run down his leg. Is it completely
it's
sealed?
Not a fucking leotard.
It's a onesie. It's an armored onesie.
It's interesting that you went straight to leotard.
Yeah. Is it spandex?
Onesie? I think he has different components like breastplate, trousers, pauldrons.
Yeah.
Trousers.
I think, for what it's worth, I think because he's quite an accomplished magician as well, he's instigated a perpetual tiny portal at the tip of his peen. So anytime it's just, the top of the portal is above the flame of Azurian, so he's constantly pissing on the. No, never mind.
No. The other end of the portal's he can just make it appear in his palm, so he could just be talking to his generals and be like. Puts his hand out to his side as I'm peeing right now.
Like a really shit Iron Man.
Okay, now we've just got onto the Rick and Morty pissed guy. That's all that is.
Yeah,
superhero.
Oh, fuck's
all roads lead to Rick and Morty, regrettably. So, yeah, what you have to keep in mind is that it's been 13 years since he was burned in the flames of Azurian. So he's been kind of raw dogging it, in quotes, for 13 whole years before his armor was put on. Yeah.
It's just everything he touched. Ow! Yeah. Oh!
Oh, it's like he's just got really aggressive eczema over that time. All the skids just sloughing off.
So, I mean, and in that 13 years, he was just pissed off. Just really.
Well, you would be, wouldn't you? Maybe he was in some sort of hermetically sealed bubble to protect his immune system.
Like an
amniotic sac. No.
no. He could hear people quite fine, yeah. He was in one of them anaconda chambers.
Anaconda chambers.
Go back.
Right.
As the war continues, Malekith's forces are coming increasingly under pressure, and where he once had the numerical advantage, his forces were being ground down. So he pinned all his hopes on a kind of face-to-face confrontation with Caledor himself. And they met in the skies above a battle referred to as the Battle of Malekith, which I think is just lazy writing. Caledor, Malekith, really?
Yeah.
Caledor.
Gary.
Caledor. Caledor with a K.
Yeah.
Caledor with a K. Zalador with an X.
Zalador. I am the sorcerer
Yalador
Zalador.
with a soft J.
Isn't that one of Gandalf's mates? What? Caledor fought Malekith above the Battle of Malekith. Caledor had mounted his dragon Maedrithnir, and Malekith had mounted his dragon Sulach, and they fought. It all got a bit weird.
Got a bit blue. How's your dragon?
If you could view the battle above the Battle of Malekith, you would see a lot of it was censored. There was like black boxes over it.
And occasionally out of the blurred section, you just see two hands high-fiving each other.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Or just like, hey.
Or the reluctant fist bump because they were enemies. Ultimately, Caledor was victorious and cast down, I say, Malekith. And Malekith's followers were once again forced to drag their loser king from the field of battle. This had happened. So I mean, it's the real Nagash syndrome, although this technically was before Nagash. The bad guys never seem to win. They never, they always come just close enough to finishing their master plan, and then no, denied.
They get the last laugh, though, right?
Ultimately, yes.
Spoiler.
Spoiler. This really is the kind of final straw, not just for Malekith, but also for his kind of generals and his troops, because there's we're always going to lose. What the fuck is going on? This leads Malekith to go what we like to call a little bit mental. And he announces his plan to destabilize the Great Vortex, allowing chaos back into the world. And as chaos is coming back into the world, he himself, with the aid of his mum and the kind of coterie of renegade archmages, will bind the demonic forces of chaos to his will, and he will be able to rule the entire world. In terms of megalomania, that's right up there.
Yeah. It seems like a flawed plan.
And you sure this is going to work?
So explain to me how you're going to do this, Malekith. Don't worry about it.
Sure this is going to work?
Don't worry about it.
Because it started with walking through a fire. You didn't do that. You got weird on your dragon and got defeated in the middle of the air. That didn't work. And now you want to let chaos run riot and you're going to just tame them all.
Sweet. Yeah? Okay.
You sure about this? You sure about this? You don't want to dial it back a bit? What did we learn, Malekith? What did we learn?
As he's announcing this plan and getting, and organizing the logistics for it, there's only one sorcerer within his kind of group of renegades that goes, no, hang on a second, this is horse shit. So it's
You're right.
It's an archmage referred to as Urathian of Ular. he escapes and makes his way in a very penitent way to Caledor and informs them of this plan. There's a huge invasion then from Nagrithi through to the inner kingdoms, and a huge army of Dark Elves surrounds the Isle of the Dead and begins to destabilize the vortex and the magical protections. So you're looking at the disruption of the kind of geomantic flow of magical energy into the Isle of the Dead.
They just threw a few pennies into the vortex
and make some
rattle
funky
around it.
wishes.
They just walked up to all the old archmages and put their hands about an inch from their face going, "I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you." I find that very disruptive.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the Great Vortex Mages Union. Hello, fellow mages of the Great Vortex. Many of you who are members of the Great Vortex Mages Union will be aware of our 72-hour strike commencing next week, where we will stage a walkout to highlight the injustice against us mages who tirelessly maintain the Great Vortex. Injustice for our poor working conditions, such as being frozen in time indefinitely, minimal and often zero toilet breaks during shifts, insufficient protection against the relentless waves of chaos entities that we're committed to guard against, and a frankly pathetic dental plan. And all the while, we are expected to thanklessly sustain the Great Vortex in order to protect the entire world against the almighty threat of chaos entering our domain. Well, no more. I, Caledor, chairman of the Great Vortex Mages Union, invite elves, non-elves and all races, the mages, the sages, and those at various career stages, to stand with us in solidarity and show those in positions of authority that we will no longer be taken advantage of, that we have a right to a proper standard of welfare, and that we are not afraid to make our demands clear. So, to all who want to see a chaos-free world, join us at the picket lines, raise your placards high, and join us in chorus as we chant for justice. For goodness sake, give Vortex Mages a toilet break. Really? Is that the best chant we can come up with? By heck. Very well. We thank you all for your time and your unwavering support for justice.
Yes, as it's important to remember that not only is the Isle of the Dead protected by kind of black-cloaked, hooded guards of elven nature, but also all of the original archmages, including Caledor Dragon Tamer, are still there, still chanting. They have been chanting for about 5,500 years in terms of present-day Warhammer. These are men and women, elves and shelves? No, who are elves and shelves, who are constantly trapped in Amber. They're constantly reliving the ritual that they have to maintain to be able to draw chaos out of the world. It's not a one and done ritual. It's still happening. It's an ongoing thing, and that's why there's so much power around the ritual site. The forces of Caledor meet the forces of Malekith. Huge battle, hanging gardens of Babylon. There's a lot of war, I suppose, when two armies meet. That's really what you would describe it as. And ever so slowly, Malekith's forces are beginning to win. They are which with every step is costing hundreds of lives, if not thousands, but they're making their way towards the archmages, and the intent really is to disrupt the ritual by killing as many of them as they can. It is at this stage that the archmages who are there go, wait, fuck this for a game of soldiers, and they augment the forces of Caledor with huge defensive spells and some offensive spells aimed at Malekith. The problem with that is, they succeed in holding back Malekith, but it disrupts the kind of equitable flow of power from the winds of chaos into the Great Vortex. So Ulthuan starts to ripple the whole continent because there's such destructive power being unleashed, somewhat accidentally, and the whole continent kind of warps and twists. And this is when you get to the point referred to as the Sundering. Kingdom of Nagarithi and also the Kingdom of Tiranoc, both on the western outer realms of Ulthuan, are effectively destroyed. Tiranoc loses half of its land mass, just simply breaks off from the continent and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Listeners will recall that Ulthuan is not a bedrock-based island. It is an artificial floating continent. And same happens in Nagarithi, where it's described that 1,000-foot tidal waves wash over the kingdom, mountains collapse. This is where what becomes at this stage the Dark Elves have to imbue their castles with magic so that they float away outside of the kind of magical floatiness that is Ulthuan itself. So this is where you get the floating cities, the floating fortresses, the black arcs, as they're referred to, from the Dark Elves.
When you say floating, do you mean they're floating on
the sea?
They're floating on the sea. Right, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they'd floated off in like balloons.
No, that's the castles of Zinch, but we'll cover them in a few hundred episodes. Malekith's followers, once again, grab him and they flee to Tor Anlec, which is the capital city of Nagarithi, and then they make their way to evil Canada, and they establish the kingdom of Nagaroth. Mr. Chris.
The followers of Malekith have got to be pretty fucking loyal at this point. I mean, third attempt.
Yeah.
Just doing anything. Just do something. Just succeed at something, Malekith.
Yeah.
Had he lost any followers in the run-up to this, or are all his followers staunch followers? Are they Malekith to the end? Did people just defect? You had that mage, that someone the sensible, who was like, yeah, no. First time, more fault me. Second time, something. Third time, hard no. I'm not involved in this. And he went and told Caledor about this, didn't he? So he defected essentially. Were there any other elves like that which were followers of Malekith and had enough of his fucking foolish ambitions and was like, yeah, I'm backing the wrong horse here?
Because this guy must be handing out fucking mean wristies to maintain that level of support, right? There has to be some bonus.
Well, you've got to remember, his mum runs the cults of excess and pleasure.
Right, okay.
So they're not only do they offer unearthly delights in terms of keep for loyal people, but also they're the secret police of what becomes the Dark Elf race. So there's a kind of push-pull to keep people loyal. But we have to tie it back to the idea that the elves have, a complete belief in the righteousness of their actions. So that transfers regardless of which side you're on. So you'll have entire groups of elves who believe it is 100% the right thing to do to back Malekith because he has the strength to
he doesn't
defeat chaos. He's betrayed by traitors, as all people in power announce when they fail. So
it was a traitor. A traitor did it.
He has the strength. He just doesn't. He doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't really know how to wield it.
He hasn't got the support. That's my point. He was betrayed by traitors. I mean, isn't that not the same thing almost than like just not having the support you need in the first place? No.
yeah, effectively. So that is the sundering, that event where effectively the Atlantis event, in quotes, is the sundering of Ulthuan, where it sees effectively 20% of its landmass sunk to the bottom of the ocean and the creation of evil elves. Mr. Chris.
What caused the sundering? What was the
cause of the sundering was the disruption in the suckage of chaos out of the real world, when the archmages had to momentarily take their focus away from maintaining the ritual to help defend against Malekith's forces.
So these archmages, are these the ones that were kind of frozen in amber, or are there additional...
Yeah. At this stage, they have been doing this ritual for about 2,000 years.
Oh, right. Sorry. So they're actually, they were, in that moment, they were capable of like turning around and pointing it at someone else.
Yeah. They don't need to eat or drink. They're continuously, trapped in, like time doesn't mean anything in that island.
Right.
So they're as cognizant of what they're doing and what's happening, but they're untouched by time. And if they leave, sundering. So they stay there and keep the ritual going. They're constantly chanting. Imagine the dry mouth after a few thousand years of just talking. Yeah.
And they're, like you say, they're cognizant. So they're actually aware of the passage of time for them, but time isn't moving. Do you know what I mean? Like they feel 2,000 years old?
It's like those music videos where like you can see the singer guitarist playing along and people just whizzing past blurring. Do you know what I mean? Like, sat on a subway.
It's that kind of idea.
I'm having a bit of an existential crisis on the run up to my 40s. Maybe I need to speak to one of these guys because they've been around the block, man. So how do you do it? It's your 2000th birthday coming up. Like, what's...
do you want to do anything special?
2000. So, that assumes that they started this when they were 0 years old. Okay, so you're 2040.
The Isle of the Dead. The world has been protected by toddlers, elven toddlers.
So they were like, right, okay, we've got to deal with these guys because they're going to come and fuck everything up. So they took their eye off the ball for a second, and the whole fucking continent fell apart.
Yeah, effectively.
Wow.
Yeah.
The sundering. I had it in my mind. It was something to do with the Skaven. When Thanquol had a happy accident and blew a hole in the middle of the world or something like
that. No, that's about 1,000 years ahead of where the sundering happened.
Okay.
The Skaven don't even exist yet.
Okay.
Carl, do you know what sundering means? I'd never heard the word before.
Sundering?
Yeah.
No, I feel like I get the essence of it, but I don't know. I wouldn't know how to define it. I'll be honest.
Technically, it's breaking into parts.
Yeah, it's split apart. It seems like a very apt name.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, maybe that's why all the university graduates who work there decided to call it that, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I love the idea. It's a coincidence.
Continent break doesn't really roll off the tongue as well as the sundering, does it?
So I had a sundering yesterday that the handle fell off one of the mugs of my teacup. Is that a sundering? It feels a bit too epic. Something like that. Do you know what I mean? Sundering needs to be like on a continental scale. It needs to be big. It needs to be.
No.
Oh no! My mug sundered.
Did it sunder? Was the sundering of Kral's mug? Did it occur while you were actually drinking it?
The sundering? No. Just as I took it out the dishwasher, it clipped something. I was like, oh no, it's sundered. Sundered all over the place.
The closest I ever got, I think, was maybe about 3 weeks ago, where I just vomited. Oh wait, that's the chundering.
God.
Thank you.
Oh dear.
So, Ulthuan is in bits. There are as many dead elves, now high elves, we will say, as there are dark elves. No one has enough energy or forces to pursue Malekith and his armies. There needs to be a time of recuperation. Caledor the First still is the Phoenix King, and sensing that this is going to be a long drawn out bitter feud, he institutes the founding of several gates running through the Anuli Mountains, covering the kind of northern areas, with a kind of view to making it very, very difficult for the forces of Nagarathi to get through into the inner kingdoms.
Not impossible,
These
just
are
really tricky.
really tricky.
Why did they just
like
stop
en
there
masse?
and not just make it impossible?
Yeah, why did they leave doors?
They just scattered Lego everywhere.
Ouch. It's like the Death Star, that one weakness. Just put a fucking armor plate over the core. Just like...
It's an aesthetic choice. So these are named after kind of great mythical animals, with the exception of one, I think. So it's from south to north. Well, dealer's choice. North to south, south to north.
We'll go south to north, won't we, Ben?
Yes.
South to north. So it's the Eagle Gate, Griffin Gate, Phoenix Gate, Dragon Gate, and Unicorn Gate.
Ferret Gate.
South
Unicorn
to
Gate.
north.
Okay.
And Watergate, Dressgate, and other amusing things that are not really that amusing. Party Gate. Yeah. So with kind of the inner kingdoms now relatively secure, and Nagarathi completely kind of effed up, a great kind of period of defensive training, a period of recuperation, reconstitution, and other words happens in Ulthuan, and it's decades before any kind of expedition is sent out. They really did lock up all the doors pretty tightly. Although your point is well made, Chris. Why did they even have doors? And the peace reigns once again. While this is happening, while the inner kingdoms are recuperating, the outer kingdoms, especially Tiranoc and the Northern Isles, where the Blighted Isle is, are under kind of Dark Elf sway, if not control. And unfortunately, the Dark Elves managed to seize control of the Blighted Isle, but do nothing with it. You think if you would grab hold of it and own it, it's going to be relatively easy for Malekith just to kind of sail across, pick up the Blade of Cain, and F some shit up. Yeah. But perhaps, given his track record, he was worried that he would slip on the top step and smash his face in. Captain Failure.
Get a potter's wheel through the heart.
Dude, it just spins.
Like really ungraciously, undignified. Like,
yeah. With his
what a way to go. Yeah, spread eagled. Butt naked.
Butt naked.
Oh, no.
In shards of your broken armor with a squeaking potter's wheel kind of stuck on top of you.
Yeah, like lopsided. Like.
And then he goes, I'm all right. And then a big glob of clay just hits him right in the face and he suffocates. Caledor is kind of outraged that this is still happening, that the Blighted Isle is under Dark Elf control, and if they seize the blade, that's it, they're fucked. So he personally leads an expedition up to the Blighted Isle, where they clear out much of the Dark Elves, if not, in fact, all of the Dark Elves that hold the Isle, and return it to the kind of ownership of the Phoenix King and the people of Ulthuan. While Caledor is standing there, the Blade of Cain, it appears as a sword to him as well, calls to him and invites him to pull the sword from the altar and reenact the great kind of deeds of Anarion and kind of destroy the treacherous forces of the Dark Elves. Caledor stands there for quite a long time and eventually just quietly says no and turns his back on it and walks away.
Amazing. Legend.
The cheek.
Which is, it speaks to his character. So he walks away, returns to his ships, and the fleet heads back to Ulthuan, Unfortunately, his ship is separated from his fleet by a storm, whether it is a naturally occurring storm or an evil, benighted storm, is unclear. And his ship is set upon by a Dark Elf raiding fleet who set his ship on fire. And despite several hours of combat, it becomes clear to him that the ship is going to be taken and he'll become a prisoner of Malekith and used in various ways to influence the people of Ulthuan. And he doesn't want that. He doesn't want that for him. He doesn't want that for his people. So in his kind of full suit of heavy magical armor, he just falls off the deck of the ship and sinks to the bottom of the sea, thus passing a good Phoenix King, kind of the Phoenix King that ostensibly saved Ulthuan. Yeah, passes into memory. That's a bad end for a good king.
Rest in power, man. Rest in power.
Well, rest at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
Caledor the First, having drowned, is replaced by his son, Caledor the Second, who's referred to as the warrior within the kind of elven Book of Days. He, where his father was deliberate and earnest and, you know, a very kind of accomplished warrior general style guy, his son was a foppish douchebag. He came to power for some reason, if listeners will recall. They had decided not to engage in hereditary kingship and go by the right of the barbecue right of Azurian. But suddenly everyone thought, well, Caledor the First was pretty good, so let's get Caledor the Second set up. And somehow he managed to pass through the flame while still being a douche. One must realize that the context that all this happens in is Ulthuan has really isolated itself from the world while it was resolving its civil war. Mr. Chris.
Just picking up on your point about Caledor the Second making it through the fires of Azurian, the ceremony to become Phoenix King, even though he was not a great character, is your ability to pass through the fire, is that down to the person's will? Can anyone potentially do it, or does the fire itself has a say in who it will let pass?
I think it's the god Azurian has the final say on who can make it all the way through. There comes a point through the ritual when you get to the halfway point. That's where, you know, every nerve ending in your body is on fire, quite literally, and it's burned away the less desirable aspects of your character. If you have the willpower to push through that point, you are effectively rebuilt.
Right.
And come out the other side as the Phoenix King. One must now think about how bad Caledor the Second's character was before he got to the halfway point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there a blind spot in Azurian's kind of, you know, approach to this? He's like, oh, I didn't tick the douchebag box when he was going through. That's what the problem was.
So Ulthuan, separated from the world, begins then to reach out to all its colonies, reaches out back to its old allies, including the dwarves. So we begin to see the resumption of trade between Ulthuan and the Karak Angkor, and the dwarves once again get into a kind of good trading relationship in good standing between those two races. Now, previous listeners who have hit episode 19, which is one of the dwarf episodes, will have a firm understanding of what's happening next.
Uh-oh.
We are entering a period of disruption, shall we say. So, as the trade is kind of back in blossoming, dwarven caravans begin to mysteriously disappear. This is trade caravans, not like city break caravans where you drive around the place and just look for somewhere scenic. Yeah. Oh, I thought that was funnier than it actually was. Story of my life. So It becomes, over a few months, it becomes quite clear that dwarven caravans are being attacked by high elf forces, or forces clad in the armor and livery of high elf forces. It is, of course, the Dark Elves. Malekith has instructed his shades, his scouts, to disrupt this alliance. He does not want there to be an alliance between dwarves and high elves. So Dark Elves, clad in the armor of high elves, begin wiping out dwarven caravans. This all comes to a head when the dwarven high king realizes what's happening, in terms of it's the elves attacking his people, and he sends an ambassador to demand to know what's happening. As we will all no doubt suspect from what is referred to as the War of the Beard, what happens to the dwarf ambassador? He is insulted, mocked, and then shaved on the order of shame-shaved on the order of, do you know who my dad is? Caledor the douche, which triggers such a stereotypical cultural response from the dwarves that they assemble a huge army and march on Tor Alessi, one of the kind of head colonies in the old world, head elven colony, and they lay siege to it and demand either recompense in money and apologies or in blood. Guess which happens?
Is it blood?
Over the next few years, there is such a staggering amount of violence and war between the two races that they effectively, they reduce their each's population by about 20%. There's a staggering amount of war carried out. And just to give you an idea of how serious it's taken, towards the end of it, the dwarves destroy an elf colony called Athel Maria. And as they're laying siege to it, the actual city itself, they destroy everything around it. So the orchards are cut down and the wood is used for war machines and for fuel. The fields are salted and the stones of all the temples and smaller dwellings and palaces are reduced to gravel for paving on dwarven roads. And this is my favorite bit of detail. All the statues of the kings, princes, and gods are taken to wall the cisterns of all the dwarven lavatories.
Yes. So, yeah. Just a bunch of faces looking at you.
Yeah. So you're looking at effectively 300 years of just utter cultural war, with army after army mincing into each other. Ultimately, the Phoenix King himself comes to the old world, where previously Belshazzar had come to offer, friendship and alliances. Caledor the Second turns up and really doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on in terms of statesmanship, as it were. So the two meet. Yes, the two meet. And
the end.
At one of the sieges, Caledor the Second, it's really kind of, depending on which side you listen to, the events are very different. Caledor the Second opens up the gates, Tor Alessi, and invites the dwarves in. This is the high elf perspective. From the dwarven perspective, they knock the gates to the ground and march in. Either way, the high elves maintain that they're seeking a peaceful solution to this war that has dragged on for centuries. And in fact, the war has dragged on for 10 times as long as the Ulthuan Civil War, which ended with the sundering. The dwarves reject any call for peace talks because over the centuries, there have been innumerable times when the elves could have sued for peace, and every time they chose war. Regardless, Caledor the Second is said to have charged out to meet Gotrek Starbreaker, the High King of the Dwarves, in single combat. This is contested by the dwarves, who say that during the battle that ensued, the forces just happened to end up meeting so that their king fought the Elven king. I think the dwarves perhaps have the more trustworthy account of it, because Caledor charging bravely to end to end 300 years in single combat.
It's not in keeping with his character, no.
Yeah, his battle cry of "Father!" As he ran.
Do you know who I am?
Where is your god now?
And ultimately, Gotrek Starbreaker, who is referred to as the Axe of the Elves, ultimately axed an elf and slew
Surprised everybody.
Caledor the Second, and took the Phoenix crown, the crown of the Phoenix King, the crown of the High Elves, and symbol of kinship. Not only kingship, but also the kind of divine right of Azurian, and took that as payment for the entirety of the War of the Beard.
Wow.
As the elves call it. It was referred to as the War of Vengeance by the dwarves. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
And it's now a bucket. It's now used with a mop, isn't it?
Nope, it's now tucked away in the vaults of Karazakarak, and they don't pay any attention to it whatsoever, which I think is an even bigger insult. If you've captured the symbol of an entire country, that you don't put it front and center as one of your best conquests. It's just out of the way.
Nice. Nice.
Brilliant.
And
brilliant.
Thus ends the War of the Beard. It really is, from a high elf kind of perspective, it's the dwarves had the temerity to accuse the high elves of this affront. The elves reacted by taking the piss, and then the dwarves spent 300 years sticking an axe in every elf they could find. Whereas I could describe to you in detail the account of the dwarves, but I already have. Go and fucking listen to episode 19, you cocks.
Woo, who you getting angry there, Darren? You're angry at yourself, all right?
So there we see that both Caledor the First and Caledor the Second, died a somewhat violent or ignoble death. Obviously,
one justified and one not, though, right?
One kind of self-sacrificing, and the other kind of
kind of self-sacrificing, wasn't it? Because he did. He shaved a fucking dwarf, and then he got killed 300 years later. Sounds like karma to me, buddy.
That'll do it.
That'll do it. I thought you were going to say. I was hoping there was going to be some sort of parlay, and and the elves would be like, "Look, let's settle this. Everybody shave." And they all just had a big kind of communal shaving session, and they all came out bald, and everything was fine, But no.
I don't even believe elves can grow beards. I think they're clean shaven.
Yeah, I don't think they can either.
Interesting. I didn't think that you could grow a beard for a very long time. I think you didn't think that you could grow a beard for a very long time.
I have a huge fucking beard. What are you talking about?
I'm talking to Kral. I know that you can't see it, but I'm looking at him.
I've got nubble stubble.
Nubble stubble.
Nubble stubby, yeah.
But yeah.
I can remember I started growing a beard when I lived in Dublin.
When I was about 3.
In my early 20s. It just came in. I had a good sized beard in my early 20s, and I can remember a biker at a bar came up to me and said, "Nice beard." And I went, "Oh, thanks." And he was massive and terrifying, and I went, "Oh, thank you." And he goes, "It's like I've always said, if your dad doesn't have a beard, you've got 2 mums." And he walked off. That was it.
Was that the White Dwarf? Did he just appear?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Love it.
You've got 2 mums. I do have 2 mums. It's 21st century, mate. Get with it.
Yeah. Women can have beards. So this left, imagine the close of the War of the Beard ultimately left the High Elves in a very weakened position, because not only had they taken it in the side from the Dark Elves, they are now had spent 300 years taking it in the other side from the dwarves.
They got no sides left.
They got no sides left. Ultimately, this led to the election of Caradriel as Phoenix King, referred to as the Peacemaker. His charge really was to preserve elven culture as it was, and to try and keep it from degenerating any further. He is a prince from Barry. He's from Ivris, and became quite an accomplished king in terms of pragmatism and kind of knowing his own limits. He is not particularly great general or fighter, but he knew generals and fighters, so he appointed them into positions where they could lead forces. So he, as I said, he knew his limitations and kept the focus on the defense of Ulthuan and the projection of high elven power. This worked in their favor, because within a few years, a couple of black arcs rocked up. They were referred to as the Citadel of Ecstatic Damnation and the Jade Palace of Pain. Very kind of Ron Seal names for huge, huge floating fortresses of Dark Elves. And what we see then is a resurgence of Dark Elf interest, trying to get a foothold on Ulthuan once again, as these black arcs landed in Nagrathy, and would then kind of form the focus point, form the seeds of a new Anlec in the Shadowlands. So we'll recall Tor Anlec was the city. This now is just referred to as Anlec. And it's from here that Dark Elves would gain their foothold and begin raiding within Ulthuan once again. They endure a decade of battles and wars from the forces of Anlec, and the already weakened High Elf army is then supported by a call from Caradriel, from the Phoenix King, a recall, if you will, of all elves from around the world. They're ordered to abandon their lives, abandon their colonies, and return to Ulthuan to shore up their own forces and defend their kind of natural home. This goes a long way to reinforcing the High Elf forces and allows them to hold the Dark Elves to a stalemate. They're still unable to get past the kind of enormous 5 gates, but they are in kind of little skirmishy squads and small battalions able to cross the Anuli Mountains and kind of raid within the inner kingdom. But ultimately, they're able to kind of, hunt down and destroy these forces. These gates form the kind of real core of the defensive strategy. So Caradriel designs a kind of rotating roster of forces. And this really is where you start seeing citizen soldiers that play a huge role in Ulthuan from beyond then, a kind of citizen militia of Ulthuan. So every citizen is able to either be a spearman or an archer in the kind of broad sense of those troop types. So that the entire populace of Ulthuan can be raised up as a levy militia should the forces that are coming to fuck them up get past the gates. But the gates remain strong. The gates remain whole, as it were. It's at this time, so a century into Caradriel's reign, that the kind of final colonies, the final high elf colonies, are abandoned, and the elves return home, or rather, most of the elves return home. There is one kingdom, one colony of elves that refuse to leave the old world because they have developed a very kind of spiritual relationship with the land itself, and to some extent have knowledge that this is where they were actually born. This is where the elven race was created within the old world. And this centers around the old kind of colony of Athel Loren, or what would become Athel Loren, and that is the creation of the Wood Elves.
Oh.
So this process of exodus from all of the old colonies, especially in the old world, sees now not only the reinforcement of the high elves against the dark elves, but also the birth of the wood elf culture as a distinct race, in quotes. So that's really where we have the three distinctions. Those are the main events in terms of the distinctions between the elves and how the three different races of elves were created. And ultimately, it's a relative time of peace. There's constant kind of grindy warfare in the northwest of Ulthuan, but it's really down to skirmishes rather than civilization-ending wars. And the roster, the rotating kind of battalions of troops that feed into the 5 great fortresses mean that the fortresses are constantly at full strength. They're able to defend themselves if they're attacked en masse, which they're not really. They still have the kind of skirmishes every now and then. And the cities of Ulthuan are once again more populous than they were, but not as populous as they had started out being, if you see what I mean. They went down to like 50% and now they're back up to 65%, that kind of idea. And that really forms the kind of full stop for Caradriel's reign, and he is the first Phoenix King to ever die of natural causes. He passed away naturally without violence.
Naturally,
and I think,
with a sword in his face.
I thought elves were immortal.
No, they're not immortal.
Where did you get that from?
I think we've described elves as functionally immortal.
Sure.
They are immune to disease and stuff, but they do fade.
Okay.
They can pass away from old age, and Caradriel, the peacemaker, Caradriel, the peacemaker, died of a jippy hip.
How old was he?
That was
7,000.
Yeah, I don't know how old he was. He reigned for a little under 600 years. 6 years.
6 years.
He reigned for 600 years. Yeah.
Okay, and let's just assume he was 40 when he started.
You really got the number 40 on your mind, Ben, don't you?
I mean, what can I say? It's an existential crisis. Okay. All right.
So really, those three events, the Sundering, the War of the Beard, and the Exodus, where the colonies were recalled, that sets not only the stage, but the context for all the elves moving forward.
Nice.
Great.
And that's it. That's my lot for this episode.
Done.
Groovy as fuck, yo. How much of this are we going to remember next episode, Krell?
Let's try and remember as much as we can now, shall we?
Yeah, okay, right. Give us a WhatsApp recap right now.
What was your favourite bit of this episode, Ben?
Oh, it's somewhere in the middle.
Oh, how the tables have changed. Turned.
What was my favourite bit? I mean, the actual events leading up to the Sundering are pretty cool. The fact that the idea of the amount of energy that it would take to make a continent wobble is it's a lot of power. It's a lot of power.
Yeah. It seems like the elven lineage and elves in general were just on a downward slope, really, after the polar gates. Well, after the passing of Anarion, really, and Anarion lost his shit. Like, Belshamar did his best; he wasn't too bad, but Caledor the Second kind of fucked things up, and things just didn't go very well, really. For the elves.
I think the real high point for the elves, the real pinnacle of their history, is when Caledor the First looked at the Sword of Cain and just said, "No." Yeah, that's fucking all downhill from there, wasn't it?
And then as he walked away, there were explosions behind him, and he didn't turn around.
Yeah, exactly.
He just kept walking.
Yeah, he just kept walking past the camera.
I almost hearing about Malekith.
Cheeky wink as he went.
Just takes his shades off. Yeah, learning of Malekith's downfall and like prior to learning more about Malekith, you think he's just a bad, evil dude with some, with some baggage. But I can kind of see, I wouldn't say sympathize. I wouldn't say I'm on his side, but I can kind of see how things unraveled for him. But at the same time, in parallel to Malekith going deeper and deeper down into Dark Elf territory, the Hives themselves weren't doing themselves any favor, in particular under the reign of Caledor the Second. Do you know what I mean? They were just being dicks as well. And again, they're kind of both as bad as each other in many ways. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of elves in any IP anyway at the best of times, but yeah. Do you know what I mean? That there's parallels in terms of their I wouldn't say evilness. I feel like Malekith probably doesn't believe he's evil. He just believes he's just self-righteous. He's just like, I should be fucking king. I can do a better job. He's the other side of the same coin, isn't he, really?
Yeah, I think we touched on this in the introduction to High Elves in terms of how they are corrupted by chaos, and it's more a psychological corruption than a physical corruption. The High Elves are self-assured to the point of hubris and arrogance. The Dark Elves are selfish and entitled. And really, they're a bit of a "do you know who my dad is" kind of race in terms of their psychology. They're the Sith of the Warhammer world, and the Wood Elves are isolationists. Leave me the fuck alone. That's how the chaos has warped their kind of cultural psyche. So they are all as bad as each other. They're not evil. Like the Dark Elves are not. They're not a chaotic race, as it were. They're not aligned with the forces of evil. They are their own force of self-assured, selfish, entitled douchebags. Yeah.
Do the High Elves refer to themselves as High Elves?
No, well, sort of. They're the Azuri. They refer to themselves as, that's their racial name. The Dark Elves are the Druchii, and the name of the Wood Elves eludes me at the minute.
Interesting. It's probably
the Woodies.
The Woodies.
Hey.
The Woodies, yeah.
Jinx.
The Wood-Eye. The Wood-Eye. Yeah. The Wood-Eye.
Nice. Nice. All right. Are we, shall I wrap up?
Nah, we'll just keep going. It'll be fun.
Why not?
You've both got nothing. All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. Big thank you to all our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this without you guys. You cover our costs and allow us more time planning content. If you're not part of this merry band, you've enjoyed what you've heard in this episode, and you want to support us, head over to patreon.com/layingdownthelore and sign up today for as little as £3. This will give you access to our Discord server so you can come and chat with us directly, and there's an ever-growing pile of exclusive bonus content on there. If you're keen to support this podcast but you don't fancy a subscription, you can head over to layingdownthelore.com/support us, where you can find links to our affiliates and other support platforms. We'll be back again displaying just how little Chris knows. Until then, goodbye.
Ta-da now.
The Wood Elves are called the Azrae.